Social. It's International Education Week here at Morgan State this Friday, 1 o'clock in the Student Center. Be there or miss out.
What is it?
International Education Week.
When?
This Friday, 1 o'clock.
Where?
At the Student Center.
I'll be there.
I'm with it.
All right, it's 1 p.m. right now. Hello, everyone. I would welcome you to our third webinar for this year's webinar series, brought to you by the CIES Study Abroad International Student Special Interest Group, STAR Scholars Network, and Journal of International Students. Here, I would like to acknowledge Morgan State University International Education Week, which is happening this week. And also many thanks to technical support from Ottawa University, as always. My name is Gao from George Washington University. Krishna and I will be your host today. Just give you a little bit background of this webinar series. In each month, feature a panel of study abroad international student experts. And throughout the webinar series, we're exploring the things and questions related to study abroad and international student research. And we are also providing student and early career scholar like you with instrumental advice on academic and professional development in the international education sector. Our topic today is global perspective on international experiences. This session is based on the book called Global Perspective on International Student Experiences in Higher Education Trends, Tensions, and Issues, which is published this year, 2018. If you like, I will copy the link to this book in the chat box. You can check it out. Hi, Kizel. Before we dive into our chat, first some housekeeping like always. If you can hear me well, please click raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. Perfect. If you can't hear me well or the screen's a little bit fussy, please refresh your browser window and please make sure your speakers are connected and the volume is on. For those who are watching right now, we welcome your comments and questions, so please enter your questions in the Q&A box below. Please know that you can ask any questions at any time, so we will try our best to answer all of your questions. All right, so let's start. Today, we're fortunate to have so many fantastic people in our panel, and so let me first ask our guest speakers to introduce themselves briefly. Because we'll dig more into the chapters later on, so please be brief. Please share your name, institution, and your research area, and perhaps what brings you webinar today. And I would like to start with Krishna from Morgan State University. Hi, Krishna.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Krishna Bista, Associate Professor of Higher Education here at Morgan State University. I've been doing research in higher education, mostly focusing on international student college experience. And I'm here with my colleagues, Dr. Uttam Gauli.
Hello, everybody. My name is Uttam Gauli. Thank you, Dr. Bista, for that segue. I am honored to be working together with Dr. Bista at Morgan State University, and we are leading the internationalization initiative here. A lot of activities, international activities going on at Morgan, and it is very exciting. We are about 1 hour northeast from Washington, D.C., and we are trying to make the most out of our location, and we have about 40% of our faculty that is international. So there is a lot of momentum. So we are trying to leverage our expertise on internationalization to make this Education Week a big success. And I'm very excited to be speaking with all of you today. Hello.
Thank you, Krishna and Uttam, our two old friends for our webinars. And next, David. David is from Indiana University School of Education. Hi, David.
Hi, everybody. David Nguyen, Assistant Professor of Urban Educational Leadership and Policy Studies here at Indiana University at IUPUI. My areas of interest is kind of an overlay between legal issues and issues of educational access. And part of that includes international students and their experiences on host campuses here in the United States.
Excellent, David. Thank you. So next, Helen. Helen is from Nash University, Australia. Hi, Helen. Would you like to make a brief introduction?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Helen Forbes-Mewett. I'm in the School of Social Sciences at Monash University in Australia, and I've been conducting research on international student safety and security for the past 14 years, and I'm very pleased to be part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And our next speaker, Chris. Chris is from Old Dominion University. Hi, Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Glass. I'm an associate professor at Old Dominion University in the Department of Educational Foundations and Leadership. I've written a book on international student engagement, and some of my current research involves the mobility patterns of high school aged international students, transnational scholars, and first-generation international students that are globally mobile.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So our next speaker is Musmi. Musmi is from International Institute for Higher Education Research and Capacity Building. Hi, Musmi. Would you like to make an introduction? Oh, Musmi, we lost you.
Unmute.
You just need to unmute.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. First, I would like to thank Uttam and Krishna for inviting me to be part of the International Education Week at Morgan State. Unfortunately, I couldn't be physically there to be part of a panel, which I would have otherwise, but for various reasons, I couldn't travel to be part of a panel that they had invited. And then I got this invitation for the webinar, and I thought, wow, that's very interesting. It talks about global perspectives of international students' experiences. And I personally have been an international student in the US and in Australia. I have worked also outside of India, and now back working at an international institute here at OP Jindal Global University in India, one of the new universities which is very much engaged in international education, not just in this particular region of India, but globally we have been extremely engaged in promoting international collaborations, international research, and we do also receive a lot of international students, mostly coming from neighboring South Asian countries and Africa. We'll be very soon in January, we'll be receiving international students coming from Afghanistan, a group of actually faculty for training, and this is a project that is actually funded by USAID, which we are running in collaboration with Ball State University. So I hope that this little bit of input from the Global South is going to add to the meaning of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Musmi. And our next speaker, Monica from Western Kentucky University. Hi, Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Galloway Burk. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Counseling and Student Affairs. And my focus is primarily on diverse students, domestic and international, as well as helping skills to use with college students to help them succeed.
Thank you. All right, and we also have someone from University of Hawaii, Bao Yan. Hi, Bao Yan, would you like to make an introduction? Hi, Bao Yan, we lost you. Please make sure your speaker is turned on.
Yeah, I didn't unmute, okay. My name is Bao Yan Cheng. I'm an associate professor of comparative international education at the University of Hawaii. My research focuses on Chinese students studying overseas and the secondary level. I was born and raised in China and came to the US for graduate school about 20 years ago. So this international studying experience has had profound impact on me. And this topic has been close to my heart, but for various reasons, I was not able to pursue it for my dissertation, my doctoral study, and the first few years as a faculty. So after getting tenure, I decided to pursue this topic. So in the recent few years, I've been focusing on this topic and hope to share more details about my research in a few minutes. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Bao Yan. We have last speaker, Susan. Susan was working at Assumption College before and now is an independent researcher. Hi, Susan. We also lost you. Can you make sure you speak turned up?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Susan Waffle Arthur. As of September 2018, I was with Assumption College, and now I'm an independent contractor with betterhelp.com. We offer mental health and therapeutic services. My interest in this, so I also am a former international student. I moved to the United States in 2009, and I've been here since. My research is in the area of the international student experience, specifically focusing on Black African international students and their encounters in the United States and elsewhere around the world.
Thank you all very much for the introduction. As you know, 5 of our participants today are contributing authors to the book. I would like each of you to spend approximately minutes to make opening statement. Briefly introducing your chapters in the book. What tensions and issues did you see with regard to international experience? What are some of the implications for scholars and students and perhaps policymakers? And I would like to start from Krishna, because you wrote the first chapters on exploring the field, understanding international student experience, sort of like an umbrella for the entire book. Would you like to start?
Sure. I do have a copy of the book, just arrived a couple of weeks ago. And first of all, thank you for everyone for the excellent contribution support. We were able to include 19 chapters out of 72 proposals we have received. And those remainings will be included in the journals or the second book that Dr. Galloway is leading. And also appreciate for the colleagues around the globe who has provided excellent endorsement about the book, and also my sincere thanks to Dr. Chris Glass, who has written the foreword for the book. So in a few minutes, I will be sharing the overview of what the book was about and why we were interested for that. Actually, in the book project, as an editor, I was trying to capture the holistic international student experience to look into international students' experience in major 4 thematic areas of scholarship: 1, social identities; 2, academic experience; 3rd, personal well-being; and the 4th, post-study experience, which is the list of research in overall international education. And as an editor of the book, the way I want to paint a holistic pictures about different areas of student support, particularly their needs, experiences, success, while situating these 4 issues in the light of global and local disruptions in higher education and international education due to dramatically shifting geopolitical economic dynamics. So colleagues and those who contributed the chapters, the way I framed the first chapters, it includes a broader range of student experiences. Student support services, which is well documented in international education research, has predominantly examined from the the value is seen from improving revenue, diversity, and internationalization. Probably you have heard the story of the blind man and the elephant, how people were able to see the blind man from different angles. The same thing applies, particularly different professionals specializing in different areas of support services usually have a partial picture of international student experience, need, and strength. The research commonly tend to view international students through a deficit perspective, only addressing student struggles with limited English language proficiency, cultural adjustment, student dissatisfaction, social integration issues with the domestic student, and a lack of preparation to meet Western educational expectations. So for decades, colleges and universities have focused on building English language centers, delivering week-long orientation seminars, and lecturing local cultures and universities' expectations, mostly with the do's and don't do's things. And we fail to recognize the other aspect of international students. So most institutions are barely scratching the surface, and colleges and universities are far from creating a true holistic picture of international student lived experience from admission all the way to post-graduation. So as an former international student and a scholar in the field, I see the journey of international student is riddled with a spectrum, both positive and negative experiences, some of them life-changing and transformational. The international student population is not a single uniform group, rather it is heterogeneous by nature that requires a greater nuance in service delivery and comprehensive approach to our diversity and sociocultural inclusion. So the fundamental questions we look into, or we ask the readers and the contributors, is to see what does it mean to be an international student? What are international student social, emotional, and academic experiences? What constitutes their successful stories of social and academic transitions? Particularly, we also looked into post-study experience at home and abroad. So that was the overall framework of the book and the first chapters that I wrote in the book. And hopefully some of our colleagues now will add more value on their thoughts and experience of international student.
Sure. Thank you, Krishna, for giving us a snapshot of the entire book. And I would like to turn that over to David. David, in the second part of the book, Contextual Influences on International Student Learning Experience, you wrote an article on international students' experience developing leadership capacity on host campus. Would you like to make a statement on that?
Yes, thank you very much, Janet. So the chapter that I contributed is part of a study of which used the multi-institutional study of leadership data. So the MSL is a survey instrument that examines and studies student leadership experiences and their leadership development as well as leadership self-efficacy. The quantitative study has been used to take a look at, for example, leadership development of resident assistants, racial ethnic minority students, various different student groups. However, it hasn't been used to take a look and examine experiences of international students on our campuses. And I think many times when we look at leadership experiences on our campuses, they mirror basically the programs and the directions from our domestic student population. But I think given our research and given what we know about international students, I think it's important to that we can't clump all students in, right, in the same category. And I think the results and the findings from this study, while limited, show how while some activities on campus are beneficial for leadership development for our domestic students, they don't quite show the same experiences for our international students. So based on the findings, I think we find that the more intimate activities, for example, activities where students are able to identify with, with a particular interest, let's say music or athletics, or a activity that is associated with, for example, racial ethnic identity, those sorts of things where there's a smaller group community, those activities show higher leadership self-efficacy development within our international students than the larger campus-wide activities. So I think that kind of taking that into account, we can think about how is it that we can create leadership development activities that are targeted for our international students, given the fact that our experiences of international students are much differently than our domestic students.
Thank you. So our next speaker, Helen. Helen, in the third part of the book on rethinking international student well-being experiences, she wrote an article on international student mental health, an Australian case study of a Singaporean student's perception. The mental health becomes an emerging issues among the international student is a really hot topic among the international higher education research community. So Helen, would you like to talk about our articles?
Thanks, Janet. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge my co-author of the chapter, who is GMN Jamie Gann. And Jamie was actually an international student, and she helped make this study possible, and she's now returned to Singapore. So just to give a brief overview of the chapter, it was based on a previous research has shown that there's been an increase in the occurrence and severity of student mental health problems generally, and that this has been exacerbated by for international students who have the added hurdles of being away from home and facing language and cultural barriers, social isolation and financial pressures, etc. However, by focusing just on a small group, and this sort of backs up what David just said about we can't clump all students together. And by just focusing on the Singapore students, it was interesting that the findings that came out of that, and it showed that, well, there's basically two main trends in that international students tended to avoid or delay seeking professional help. And the study certainly supported that, and that had already been in the literature. And they also preferred to seek help from informal sources, such as friends and family, as opposed to counselling services. And so the study sort of looks at that a little bit deeper. And there was different understandings among these students about mental health and mental illness. And it seems to me that the terminology that we use is quite important in that because of those different understandings. And mental health was generally viewed amongst this group of Singaporean students as general well-being. One person called it this basic level that you can sustain yourself. And another, and I quote, an aspect of health that everybody has. And mental illness, on the other hand, was commonly described as not something you can see, clinically proven, unsound mind, impairments, and it was associated along with psychiatric conditions such as depression and anxiety. So these comments from the students really pointed to the fact that we need to, in a Western context, be quite careful about the language we use, and so we're not giving sort of the wrong impressions, and to encourage students to acknowledge mental health problems. And I'll just speak a little bit about the influences behind the participants' understanding of mental health. And the media played a fairly large part, as it does in most things. And often this was in a negative way. Several participants implied that their perception and knowledge of mental health and mental illness were drawn from television shows and other forms of the media. And students who received that mental health education from the media were more likely to believe that what they saw on television was true. But other participants who'd been in contact with people who had mental health problems, they then believed that what they saw on television was actually exaggerated. Most participants in the group shared that their encounters with someone with mental health problems changed their perceptions, and that tended to be in a positive way, that their perceptions were changed. I thought that was really interesting. However, their perceptions were deeply tied with culture, and that in many instances, mental health stigma still persisted. It varied across the cultures, and of course there was variances even amongst the Singaporean group, as we would know. So all the participants indicated that young Singaporeans were not comfortable talking to a mental health professional about their mental health issues, and they found it hard to express their feelings. But one very positive thing that did come out of the study was that they indicated that their relocation to a different culture and environment, that emerged as one of the reasons for the participants' knowledge and understanding of mental health. And they specifically attributed their time in Australia to their increased knowledge and acceptance of mental health problems. And it was described by one participant, and others sort of supported this, that it was a Western kind of thing, the issue of mental health. They mentioned that Australia has what they called a more open culture when it comes to mental health and wellbeing. and that being in such an environment allowed them to experience the importance of mental health as compared to back in Singapore, where mental health is seldom discussed. And in one particular interview, which was one that sort of stuck in my mind quite a bit, was the participant commented that had he have gone to a parent with about an issue to do with mental health, he would have been told just to that he wasn't working hard enough. So there was some really, really interesting comments coming out from the students, and they were very open about their discussions, and the fact that they had shifted their perspectives, I thought was a very interesting and important finding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Howard, for sharing this fantastic research. And also thank you for sharing some of the quotes from the article. And just a short notes for the audience, if you're interested in the article, I have a copy, their authors and name in the chat box, just in case you're interested. And next, I would like to invite Chris, because Chris actually has to leave a little bit earlier for this webinar, and Chris has contributed to the foreword in the book. So I would also like you to make some short statement on your thoughts.
Great.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate this. I wrote the foreword to the book, and I think what I would simply say is, if you're a person who is an international student or international student researcher, there are really 4 dimensions, I would say, that are right now shaping the international student experience that are worth unpacking and exploring. I discuss these in the foreword in terms of the big picture and small picture, and I put them as 4 Ds: the demographics of international students, the directions in which international students are moving across borders, those things which drive international students to pursue education abroad, in the forms of delivery that international students experience. Let me, for example, start with something like delivery. It might come as a surprise to people who study international students that 3 times the number of students who study at another university do so in a way that is technologically mediated and done across borders via technology. There's 10 million international students who are enrolled in some kind of course or program that's across another border, and that shapes their experience. Demographics is another example of this. I think we see a rising number of first-generation students, middle-class students, students who are the first in their family to cross borders. And that is shaping their experience. In terms of the drivers, often international students are tending to be driven by different types of motivations that have been traditionally assumed in terms of globally mobile students, often with a much more focus on the outcomes, which is a major, as Dr. Bista said early on, is a major understudied area. And it's important to understand the outcomes of international student mobility, both individually for these students, but also the social and diplomatic outcomes that happen as a result of global mobility. And then finally, I think one of the most significant trends that we're seeing that this book explores, and the authors do so well exploring, is looking at the different directions in which international student mobility is taking place. Mobility is tending to become more and more regional, and often more and more driven by things that are related around cultural factors. There's more and more what are called quote-unquote local students, students that are looking for a world-class education in another country, but one that's not necessarily far away, that can provide a global experience. Those are countries and regional hubs like South Korea, South Africa, Turkey, Brazil, and Mexico, that are looking to be places where international students attend universities. And this book overall explores those factors and really unpacks the international student experience from these different perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right, our last but not least, Utan. And in the second part of the book, Contextual Influences on International Student Learning Experience, you wrote an article on headbomb or headway, American students' engagement with their international peers on campus. And we would like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Janet. After hearing all the inspiring words from Dr. Bista, Chris, and everybody, I would like to introduce my chapter, because it's confusing. The title itself starts with a word which you will not find in dictionary, that is head bump. So is it head bump or headway? So what I looked at is the domestic infrastructure for internationalization. I found a lot of research in international students, and I wondered whether host institutions are ready for international students, and if they are they also looking at what international students bring to the table and how that could enrich the experience of domestic students? So that student engagement part. So what I found largely is there is a big missed opportunity, which I was trying to find a word to describe, and one student gave me that word, head bump. Students are students, a federal policymaker will clearly see what the motivation of internationalization, the world is changing, there are economic imperatives for us to, make international engagements and, create business and advance humanity. And that faculty would understand, the people in academic affairs would understand why we need to, enhance mutual understanding between the people of different cultures, countries across linguistics, geographical, political barriers. But when it comes to students, it's like, what? So they need more incentives and guidance. They need to know where to start, how to do it, and in fact, learn why. So they don't see a region. That's what I found. But it is not to say that it is not happening at all. Some students are really making the most out of the presence of their international colleagues on campus. And those students who are actually enlightened and they see the value, they wish that more of their colleagues would understand that. And they wish that this experience, this transformational, this wrenching in the beginning, but transformational at the end kind of experience would be a good part of their college experience, but that is not happening largely. So I will take the quote from that student who said, head bump, asking what do you see is the value of internationalization? He said, in my view, this is in quoting, in my view, meeting international students is exciting. Not many people see it that way. Some people see it as head bumps, scratching quotation marks in the air. I see it as an experience to learn something new from different people, new culture, new food. I'm a big food guy, that's what he said. The international countries here at his institution has many international students. You have international students from all around the world, and there is so much to learn and get enlightened from. And I heard the word head bump for the first time, and I asked, what do you mean by head bump? The student said that it is something you just avoid, usually unconsciously, as one tries to avoid some bumping one's head with someone passing by to avoid injury. However, the student also mentioned the other side of the same word based on his experience of getting to know international students. When you get along with those strange-looking people and actually approach them, the student said that the same head bump situation can into headway. This term literally means the progress one is making on something. And in the case of cross-cultural encounters, it could significantly tell us about the progress in building relationship with fellow students from different backgrounds. It is in this translation of head bump into headway for global engagement on campus that institutions can do when they design spaces to turn the regular encounters into opportunities for global engagement. So I invite all of you to maybe try to read my chapter. So here, this is also my dissertation. I was assisting the quality enhancement director at my alma mater, University of Florida, when they were proposing internationalization as one of the key takeaways for international, for domestic students to learn from international students. So for that domestic infrastructure, how we can design and how we can capitalize on what exists, the modicum of motivation that domestic students may have, but how you can invoke that and make it real for them is a challenge. And I have proposed a space-based model, a global garden, which was led by those role models, those students who had the opportunity to get enlightened from the internationalization experience, mostly from the students who work as part of Engineers Without Borders. They've done a lot of international projects. So they led this student initiated project, and the whole student body was educated to pass a proposal that the most prominent space in the university quad should be renamed as Global Garden. So it's a very fascinating story of student perspectives, and there is so much to learn from the student perspectives to the faculty, to the academic leaders and policymakers, I believe. So that was a great enlightening experience. Thank you, Dr. Bista, for including this chapter in your book.
Excellent. Thank you, Utam. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your articles pertaining to international students' social cultural experience, mental health, and their learning experience. And I would also like to invite other non-contributing authors to share your thoughts on some of the tension and issues which are discussed above. What resonate with you, and what are some of your thoughts? And I would like to start with Musmi. Hi, Musmi. We lost you again.
Unmute.
Hi, everybody. Am I audible? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me to share my perspective from here in India, which at present actually just hosts only 1% of globally, just 1% of international student population, around 45,000, very, very small population of international students here. But mostly, as I said, we would be hosting students from neighboring countries in South Asia and also Africa, some students from the Middle East and Asia Pacific also. But lately there has been actually a policy focus from the government itself in India to raise the number of international students, and there are policy documents that talk about, actually there are more and more scholarships also available given to international students. And the target is to bring around 200,000 for international students in the next couple of years. But let me share with you a little bit of the history. International student and international education within the Indian context, though the numbers are very small, the history goes back actually quite far during colonial era in British India. I shared one small slide with Krishna and Uttam. I don't know if they can share it with everybody. The slide that I shared with them on the screen, is it possible, Krishna and Uttam, to share that slide?
I thought you were given that presenter link, which should have given you that, I don't know. Let's see.
You can share it. Musumi, you can share using the screen share button at the bottom of the
I can share using the screen share button.
It's at the lower, it should be at the bottom of the screen, a green box.
Yes.
Okay, bottom of the screen.
So you bring your mouse to the bottom of the screen.
Okay, yes, I saw that.
And you click
here
that.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Share. Okay, can you see it now?
It's coming. Yes.
It's coming. Okay, as you can see over here, actually right now I'm in the process of writing an article for the Asia Pacific Journal of Education on Asian cosmopolitanism, and particularly focusing on, is it visible to all of you, the slide?
It is, but it would be better if you had it in the present mode, like you had it just momentarily. It was in the larger view. If you go ahead and start the slide.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that, but
you had it
now it's,
yes, perfect.
yeah, now, yeah. So particularly focusing on the work of Indian education reformer Rabindranath Tagore. And as you can see up there on the screen, there are a couple of quotes from Tagore, who actually set up an international university for the first time during British India. India, of course, has a long tradition of attracting international students. There were ancient Indian universities which later became extinct, which were actually run by the Buddhist intellectuals and scholars, where we would be getting scholars coming from Middle East, from China, from Asia Minor, different parts of the world coming to India. But in modern history of India, during British colonial era, it was Rabindranath Tagore for the first time started a school and a university in a place called Shantiniketan, which is very near the city called Calcutta, which was the capital of colonial British India. And as you can see on the slide up there, the quotes from Tagore, he actually was a wonderfully well-traveled person also. He traveled around the world doing his own research on different education models around the world, and actually also set up the first Chinese studies department in modern times, which is called China Bhavan. It is university, and would be several different foreign languages will be taught, French, Tibetan, Chinese, all kinds of languages, along with history and social sciences from a very, very global perspective. And a lot of international students and faculty were invited to be there at this university that was set up. So these are a couple of quotes up there. I'm not reading them out to you all. I hope you can read it yourself. So as of now, post-independence, the focus of higher education in India was more in terms of nation building, and the focus became more insular. But lately there has been, as I said, policy also initiatives from the government, and we are bringing in a lot more international students once again, and not just from South Asia and neighboring South Asian country and Africa. We are also getting, but mostly for the degree program, it's neighboring countries, Africa, and some student from also East Asia. But we are also for short-term India immersion program, we are getting a lot of, actually there is a new Colombo plan. We'll be receiving like 20 Australian students. We just had an Australian presenter here from Monash, including student from Monash, coming to our university in January for an immersion program. And also we'll be also receiving faculty coming from Afghanistan for teachers training over here, and they'll be here for an entire semester. So we are getting we are also getting students coming from US and different European countries for a short-term immersion program over here for a couple of weeks or a month. And also semester, we are also having conversations with some universities to run semester-long programs in collaboration. So this is the scenario as of now. And as far as research is concerned, unfortunately, there is little research available. But our institute, the institute where I'm located right now, actually we are initiating a lot of, since we are receiving these students, we are running these training programs, we are also beginning to start our own research programs. So hopefully you all will get to hear in the future more from us about the international student experiences over here. As of now, I can't share any research data with you all about the experiences. The Colombo Plan students who will come from Australia, this is actually the second year we'll be receiving the students coming from Australia. And also for the USAID program, we will have research reports and experiences to share with you all in the future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore. Thank you for sharing the research and practice efforts that your institution you made, and I'm glad you shared them. And we have next panelist, Monica. Hi, Monica, are you still there?
Yes. Hi.
Nice. Hi.
Hi. So first, let me acknowledge that the primary researcher for this research project is Dr. Hajra Mahmood from Embry-Riddle. It was her dissertation. I was her chair, and I was her mentor for several years, so we had a long relationship. So we decided to turn her dissertation into research, into the article and book chapters. And secondly, I will apologize for coughing and sneezing. My allergies have attacked me over the last 24 hours, and they are winning. So I will maybe drinking in between. Our research primarily focused on international students and their acculturation process in the United States, as well as their level of satisfaction. And we focused the study in a small metropolitan city where there's minimal public transportation, cultural food stores, and similarly diverse people in comparison to what some of the students experienced and had in their home countries. So some of the barriers that students mentioned were like homesickness, lack of friends and friendliness in the United States, prejudice, food, and transportation. So we wanted to see how those barriers and their experiences impact their level of acculturative stress, their social cultural adaptation, and their overall satisfaction at the university. So the participants for the study were 413 students who actually, we were able to use those number of surveys, but we ended up with 486, I think, initially, out of 880 students who were on the 2 campuses. All of the students held F1 or J1 visa, with the exception of Canadian students, and they were enrolled as full-time students at either the undergraduate or graduate level, or they were enrolled in our English learning program, ESLI, or we have a program ahead now, Navitas program, which was like a university pathway program and a pre-master's program that prepared international students for university studies. And so what we measured, again, where there's the social cultural adaptation and cultural stress, and we also looked at it across demographic factors such as gender, age, degree level, and English language culture. We use the social cultural adaptation scale, the acculturative stress scale for international students, and also a satisfaction survey with the students. Some findings were, as acculturative stress increased, the level of students' social cultural adaptation decreased. And as the acculturative stress scores decrease, the students' level of social adaptation increased, which you would somewhat expect. So the more comfortable you are, less stress you have, you probably will succeed. In investigating levels of overall social cultural adaptation and their stress combined, we wanted to look at how these related to the level of satisfaction. And there was a correlation between the two. For students who were satisfied with the university, they had higher social cultural adaptation and lower stress. Male students, interestingly enough, reported slightly higher levels of cultural stress than the females, and the females reported higher levels of social cultural adaptation. Non-traditional college students reported higher levels of satisfaction with their overall experience in comparison to traditional college-age students. One of the biggest things that came up was that their English language proficiency was a significant predictor of their adaptation. So a lot of them talked about in their interviews and comments about, you know, having professors who were helpful, but they felt like if they had a better hold on the English language, people tended to be a bit more helpful to them sometimes. Females reported higher levels of social cultural adaptation. They said that, sorry. Students of non-traditional age and graduate students had better experience at the university, and they also reported more social cultural adaptation in general than undergraduate students. So some concluding thoughts basically is that considering that international students face several barriers and they make a lot of sacrifices to pursue their education in the United States, that colleges and universities need to put forth as a sincere effort to invest in their success and help them adapt to the university campus. by providing adequate services, resources, and social activities. That was something that came up in the comments as well. We also should make sure they have supportive academic and social environments that can aid in their stress reduction. And we can also give them a positive experience where they can be academically successful and hopefully have a higher level of satisfaction.
Excellent. Thank you, Monica. I'm glad you turned this presentation to the research. And we still have Bao-Yen, Susan, and Bao-Yen, would you like to?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet. So as I said, my research focus is international Chinese students studying overseas and the secondary level. In approaching this topic, I examine it from two perspectives. One is the sending side, the other is the destination side. From the sending side, my collaborator in China and I use quantitative method. We collected a large-scale data set to examine Chinese students' plan in studying overseas, including who and why. And also, we examine how studying overseas is related to the social stratification process that has been going on in China. And from the destination side, we focus on, like some of the panelists, other panelists, we focus on the social cultural adaptation and also the impact of the international learning experience on the students. I'm not going to go into details about any of those projects. Some of the paper have been published, some of them are under review. Hopefully they'll be published soon. I just want to share with you some of my conscious choices in doing the research. So the first one is why I focus on secondary level. Well, part of the reason is that the number of Chinese students studying overseas and the secondary level has increased rapidly. In 2016, the number of Chinese students in American K through 12 schools rose to about 35,627, which is a 60-fold increase compared to 10 years ago, and the number is still increasing rapidly, and they will continue to increase. So this makes a very important topic to examine, and at the same time, the social cultural adaptation of international students at secondary level is a relatively understudied topic. I know there have been lots of studies done at on the undergraduate and the graduate level, but the secondary level, there are much fewer studies, partially because it's a more recent phenomenon. It is important to examine the experiences of those students because of their age. I mean, simply because of the age, their challenge may be different, or maybe even more than the older students, because adolescence is a time of physical and psychological change and the time for search of personal identity. And if the process of acculturation is difficult for any international sojourner, it is only more difficult for those at the younger age. The interface between cultural adjustments and individual development more than double the difficult task of acculturation for them. So, that's the reasons why I focus on the secondary level. And another conscious choice I made was to adopt a growth-oriented model in studying those students' social cultural adaptation. I think some of the other panelists touched upon this, and Wu-Tam mentioned this head-bump and headway model. I think it's kind of similar to what I'm going to say. So the early model of acculturation tend to emphasize newcomers' deficiency and problems, such as low self-esteem, depression, helpless, loneliness, things like that. And I acknowledge the importance of those topics, but at the same time, and I think lots of other researchers also realize that if successful, intercultural experience can be a transformative learning experience, which leads to a journey of personal growth and development. And that is what I want to focus on, because I want to provide some kind of balance by emphasizing the growth aspect of international experiences. And so because that, I think it focuses on both the problem and the growth more accurately reflects international students' experiences. And also, more importantly, I think by focusing on the growth aspect, I hope to give more agency to international students who tend to be in disadvantaged positions. So when any international student, when you go to a new country to study, you are automatically in a kind of disadvantaged position because of all the pressure to change, and you may get lost, may get confused. But if you put it at the larger geopolitical context, the disadvantage is even more obvious because we all know the flow of international students is uneven, meaning it's mostly from developing to developed countries. So, so it's the students going, when the students going from the country on the periphery to the country in the center, because the center represents modernity, represents progress, represents advancement, there's tremendous pressure for students to think that, for international students from developing countries to think that they need to adopt those norms, they need to adapt. If there is anything they are, if they are not adapting well, that's because they are deficient. So I would like to, in my research, I would like to emphasize the growth aspect, and I think that is true. That's the international experience can be a learning and growth process. So I would like to emphasize that, both because it more accurately reflects international students' experience, and also because of a larger geopolitical context, and hopefully by emphasizing the growth aspect, research can give more agency, can raise the awareness among international students that they have the agency on their own. So it's not, they don't have to be just passive recipients. And the third conscious decision I made was to focus more on, along the growth-oriented model, I focus more on the transformational effect of intercultural and international experiences. I use the framework of global citizenship in my research, including global awareness and global competence. In the context of increasing globalization, boundaries between nations are fading and nation state is weakening as the principal site of identity construction. So the ideal of global citizenship may be increasingly needed more than ever in the globalized world, to the extent that there are anti-globalization movements and trends in some countries that try to reassert national identities, such as the Brexit, and also Trump's America First policies, as well as the ongoing trade war between America and China. The world is facing increasing conflicts and intensified tensions. So the idea of global citizenship may be needed more than ever. In this regard, international education has an increasingly important role to play in promoting global understanding and peace. And secondly, like globalization, transnational mobilities, including student mobility, have the potential of exacerbating the inequality between and within countries. International education is argued to structurally have the effect of strengthening the position of local elites to the disadvantage of the rest of their societies. So I think it's very important to examine the transformation and transformative impact of the international social experience of those students who tend to come from more privileged family background from in their society, and what they take from that experience may have profound impact on what they will do when they return to their country. So those are the three conscious choices I have made, focusing on secondary level and also the growth-oriented model, and then the transformative impact of international experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yen. Was such wonderful discussions on the topic of international student experience, and I would like to extend our webinar for another 5 minutes. So our Suzanne, the last panelist, will be having an opportunity to talk about your thoughts on the topic we have been discussed. Hi, Susan.
Go ahead and unmute your mic, Susan. in the lower left. There you
Okay.
go.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you have
Okay.
approximately 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. It's very brief. So I agree with all of you regarding, your opinions and perspectives regarding the international student experience, the way forward, directions, and things like that. And I wrote down a few things as the other panelists were talking. So for example, with regards to, the findings that Helen Forbes found for her study with Singaporean students in Australia. I also did my dissertation on, seeking, mental health services among international student populations and found something quite similar. And my population was also largely Asian. So I guess it sort of like confirms the perspective my population had. And then going on, Krishna had talked about the fact that in the book, he wanted to reflect not just on the surgeon experience, but also on the re-entry process and what that means for international students. And I've been focusing on the re-entry experience for international students. And with the sample of the people that I've been working on in this area, I know that it is also as stressful as the surgeon experience. It's as stressful as going into somebody else's country and trying to study there. And so I think that like the book encapsulates, the triumphs as well as the challenges of being an international student in a host country, and then also being someone who is re-entering your own country after studying for a long time. And then it also reiterates the fact that perceiving international students from a deficit perspective, as Krishna talked about, is erroneous, because we are not, being an international student doesn't make you deficient in any way. It's just that you have to overcome the challenges of being in a different cultural system. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you very much for concluding our webinar today. And I would just want to see if there are any other final thoughts. Yeah.
Probably, we need to go one more round since this is International Education Week, and those who are available, let's just stay extra few minutes and look into international education program that's happening on our campuses, what we are doing, and what would be the role of faculty or students. So whoever is interested, please, I'm very excited to hear ongoing international programs on campus on the occasion of International Education Week.
Sure. I would like to hear all of your thoughts before we close up.
Okay, I think I would like to go first.
Sure.
So since I'm no longer affiliated with Assumption, I'm not really sure what's going on, but I do know that they had recently launched a global education program to sort of cater to the needs of different people from different countries. And they were now looking at initiatives to partner with other universities in other areas of the world, just to promote, the school, and also to expand their reach within the territory of global education.
Anyone else?
Shall I go here next? Yeah, I'd just like to add that at Monash University, there's been some amazing language classes being made available for international students for conversational language, and it has been engaged heavily by participants helping out, and also by students taking up this opportunity. And recently, the people who instigated this particular program have won a fairly highly recognised award for the work that they've been doing. So over the years since I've been doing research, this has been a very welcome development that has worked extremely well for the students. Thank you.
So if I can use 1 minute, I hope this won't sound as like a advertisement, but my department recently launched a PhD track in global international education, and that started this semester. So I hope there'll be more applicants. And also we have a new online master program called Global Perspective on Educational Policy and Practice. So those are 2 new programs related to international education in my department.
May I?
Sure.
Well, I have already shared, we have launched quite a few programs, and we also do celebrate International Education Week over here. And our international students who are here on campus, we also get students, quite a few students coming from Tibet. At our campus, so we have an understanding. So they do cultural exhibitions, the international students, and at the same time we also have panel discussions and things like that on campus. But this year particularly, we actually invited during the International Week. We got the news about the Australian students coming under the Colombo Plan, and at the same time, this news about the student, I shouldn't say student, faculty coming from Afghanistan on a USA training on a project that we are collaborating with Ball State University in Indiana. As part of these initiatives, we have also launched a short-term study abroad India immersion program, and any student from anywhere around the world, if they would like to come to India and study India related, about Indian culture, society, economy, politics, history. We have designed this program, and it was launched at the International Education Week, and it's going to be open also from next semester onwards. That's it from my side.
Thank you.
I think I would go. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. What we're doing here at Morgan, Dr. Bista will elaborate on that, but I just wanted to reach back to what I found in my research from the head bumps and headway. So it's very interesting. The students identified many barriers, but when I asked them to talk about the barriers, they say those barriers are actually not barriers at all. For example, the biggest one that everybody said was a language barrier. And I said, really? Does language really stop you from communicating? And they said, no. But we only focus on the Chinese TA's accent. That's when language is a barrier. But if we focus on the content he's teaching, this is wonderful. So they were able to express, they were able to fall in love, and they were able to understand each other across linguistics and cultural barriers. So those role models, role model is a big keyword again. So they said that another barrier was cliquishness. I said, what is cliquishness? Like when somebody goes somewhere, everybody goes, where we human beings are gregarious by nature. But what if the role model goes to Chinese New Year festival? What if their go-getter actually chooses to celebrate Holi rather than going to a bar? Then everybody goes, everybody follows. Like they just need to create that momentum and create that environment to see what works. So that's what we're trying to leverage here at Morgan. Dr. Bista will tell you a lot about that. So the real problems are in the structures. The real problem I also was convinced was that in the Greek communities, they have national rules, like who can interact with whom. So there are restrictions. They cannot do anything. There are students who want to interact across their groups, but they are confined within their groups. So those barriers that are coming out of our assumptions, out of our worldview, even those old 1970 worldviews lurking in the minds of administrators and leaders are also playing a lot of role. So to break that, I asked the role models, what can we do? And they say, we need to do something that makes sense to the students. So that's why they renamed Global Garden. Everybody will ask, why Global Garden? When you pass through Global Garden, you feel you're part of global community. We're not in a swamp. So that was the kind of subtext that they wanted to create, and it is very effective. And that's what we're trying to leverage here. Dr. Bista has a long list of programs, what's happening at Morgan. Dr. Bista.
Thank you. Throughout the week, we are considering some of the activities that we have done that includes study abroad, Fulbright, exchange program, several other programs with the vendors who have been assisting in those exchange program. And Morgan State University being one of the HBCU, historically Black colleges and universities, we have especially strength and also the location and very warm, welcoming administrators who have a vision of campus internationalization. This year we have a long list of programs all day, all 7 days, 6 days. We started from programs related to the students, and ending this Friday with an international symposium on internationalization, and we named it why HBCU should lead internationalization in higher education. So we have a august body of scholars coming from different countries to represent and speak on the research and focusing on internationalization, and also highlighting the research, the collaboration initiative that we have been doing around the globe. And Dr. Galloway and many of our colleagues, including president, vice president, and faculty members, students have been together for this initiative. And I'm very proud to be the part of the team.
And you know what? You all are adding to this conversation. This is amazing. You're being watched by a lot of Morgan people, and you will be watched in the coming days. So these conversations are recorded, and this is a precious resource that we're creating towards advancing the humanity in a more positive direction than what it appears to be at this moment.
All right. Thank you all very much. All right. I want to, at the close of the webinar, I would like to borrow a quote cited by Rosamie. Let us unite, not in spite of our differences, but through them. I think this is the purpose of the international education, and I'm glad we're all working on that. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists for sparing the time and joining us today. And thank you, the audiences, really enjoying this webinar. There will be a full video recording of this webinar available online, so please share them with other people.